Um, uh, so real excited here to welcome you to water restoration for green building beyond the four walls. This course is approved for 1 hour in continuing education units, specifically this time around LEED BD&C, AP Homes, and O&M for the pilot credit. It's also approved for AIA Health, Welfare, and Safety, which may make it applicable to your state-based design or contractor license. Today, I'll be your moderator. My name is Brett Little, and I'm the program manager here at the nonprofit, the Green Home Institute. Questions are, we know about carbon offsets, we know about renewable energy credits, but what's up with water offsets, and what are those, and how can we use those? So that's what we're excited to be talking about today. Very important. Water is running out. I live in an area that water is running out. It's now commoditized, so we need to talk about this. And a huge thanks to our top tier sponsor, Build Equinox, bringing you the Serve 2 smart ventilation system. Unlike traditional ERVs or HRVs, it features many qualities of a smart, balanced ventilation and feedback monitoring. With a standard ERV or HRV, you get constant low flow air rate with no relation to actual indoor air quality or occupancy. For the first 3 days when the home is occupied, the air quality is poor. The ERV just can't keep up. When the occupants leave, the ERV keeps ventilating and wasting energy. Since the Serve actually monitors air quality, it ventilates only when needed. Compared to an ERV, the Serve can ventilate up to 300 CFM, quickly purging the pollutants from the home. When no ventilation is needed, the Serve can recirculate and unify the home, providing some additional heating, cooling, dehumidification in an energy-efficient manner. The Serve does this by monitoring CO2 and volatile organic compounds. Instead of an ERV exchange core, the Serve uses a high-efficiency heat pump to exchange energy between incoming supply and outgoing exhaust air. So this means maximum comfort in comparison to a traditional ERV. And the system's easy to replace for filters for your clients. MERV 13 comes standard with the unit and can be upgraded even further. What's really cool about Build Equinox is they manufacture the Serve right in Urbana, Illinois, in a facility that's 100% powered by solar. The Serve can work with the heat pump water heaters such as the Rheem Prestige to boost its capacity for radiant. Serve can be used with many green building projects to distribute Mitsubishi mini split heat pump air around the home or multi-family unit. And it can be used with our friends over at Water Furnace for the Geo Boost to help with the water furnace system. Go check them out over at buildequinox.com. And then also thanks to our second tier sponsor, Niagara Conservation. Niagara has lowest flowing toilets on the planet that work down to 0.8 gallons per flush, single flush, down to 0.5 dual flush. I've got both of these installed. I've always had them. Super low flow without sacrificing any durability, maintenance, or comfort. All right, well, I'm really excited to introduce you to our speaker, Heather here. She's the Director of Environmental Partnerships at Bonneville Environmental Foundation, which focuses on developing relationships with all types of entities, including corporations, small businesses, universities, and other nonprofits to help them understand their impacts on carbon, water, and energy. She has a diverse background in sustainability, outreach, marketing, and sales. And with her combined experience, Heather shares her knowledge on behalf of BEF to speak at conferences, present at workshops, classes on greenhouse gas accounting, water footprinting, and among many other sustainability topics. So with that, I am going to hand it off to Heather here for her to take it away. And then I hope you will put your questions in as you have them. We've got a short time here today, so we want to get to them right away. So please don't hesitate to ask them right away. So Heather, welcome. Thank you. And Heather, I think we may have lost you on the phone. I don't know if you can hear us or not, but I cannot hear you.
Oh, there it is. Wonderful. Apologies for the delay and the technical stuff. I am here now. Hope that I get to spend the rest of the hour with you. Again, my name is Heather Schrock, and I work at the Bonneville Environmental Foundation. We're out here in Portland, Oregon, and we are an environmental nonprofit. We've been around for about 22 years, working at the intersection of climate, energy, and water. And I won't go into too much detail about what we do, but if you want more information about us, please do feel free to reach out at any time after the presentation. My contact information will be there. I am going to jump into this presentation since we're a little bit behind, and I'm excited to talk to you all today about water restoration. It is a term that isn't always understood. Most people think of water in terms of conservation, and what we do at BEF is water restoration. And I'll be talking more about that as we go through the presentation here today. But there's a reason why we do this, and this is one.
Oh, Heather, we lost you again. I had to mute because there was some really bad feedback coming. I had to mute everybody. Heather, can you hear me?
All right, so let's keep trucking along here. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the reason why we are focused on water restoration, because we do believe that there's an imminent threat of water going away, fresh water that we all need so desperately. Everything we use, everything we buy, we sell, we eat, and everything we build with takes water to make it. So, and it goes beyond just the need of water for drinking. It's involved in many functions on the planet. And as the climate changes and as freshwater resources are dwindling, we are seeing these extreme weather events. And I actually made this slide a long time ago, and it's interesting to see the spread of infectious disease on there. As you may know, with the pandemic, there's some very serious issues connected to water. For those of us being told that we need to wash our hands, we need to stay clean, that is definitely contributing to the spread of the pandemic in areas that don't have access to fresh water to help them mitigate the pandemic. So sorry for the doom and gloom at the beginning here. Just wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit about why we do the work we do and why we think it's important to consider water restoration and go beyond the typical conservation measures that are done in green building. And I'm excited to introduce you to some of the ways to do so. And again, I think there's a little bit of a delay on the slides, but hopefully they're moving forward. Moving on to the next slide here, just so you all have an idea of what's going on with water use and where it is. Most water use is in agriculture. Water is used to grow things, as we know. So when we see ourselves in this pie chart here, we probably all look over here at domestic and think, oh, well, I'm just contributing to that 10%. And that really is just the direct water usage of domestic use, that turning the faucet on and off. That's at the tap. But we all have an embedded water footprint as well. And we are all a part of that 70% agriculture and a part of that 20%. So what is a water footprint, you might ask? So as I said, everything we use, we wear, we buy, we sell is involved in our water footprint. It's the amount of water used, not just at the tap, but going beyond that. And I'll show you some examples in just a second of this. But it's also important to understand our water footprint for more reasons than just knowing how much water we use. Especially in or in company water usage, in manufacturing, it's the dependence on water in our supply chains. So as a builder, there's a lot of water used to make building materials. And if we lose access to freshwater resources, it can affect our supply chains. It's important to be aware of the regulations that are out there protecting or not protecting our water resources. If you do your own water footprint or a footprint on a building, it might be interesting to see, what's affecting the water resources available to your project, and how secure are those resources. So here's some fun examples of water embedded in our everyday lives. You can see there that most of our footprint is in our diets. That's the food, of course, water being used to grow, but it also takes water to create energy. And that is definitely a two-way street. It takes water to make energy, and it takes energy to get fresh water to us. So here's some examples. 5 gallons of water for us to run a 60-watt light bulb for an hour. About 13 gallons of water to make 1 gallon of gasoline. This is the one that everyone always boos at. 37 gallons for a cup of coffee. And again, that's the water that goes into growing, processing, transporting those coffee beans and getting them to us so that we can make our cup of coffee in the morning. About 634 gallons to make a burger, 700 gallons to make a cotton t-shirt, and almost 3,000 gallons to make a pair of jeans. So when you look at our footprint from an embedded perspective, while we may only use a few hundred gallons a day in our everyday lives at the tap, our embedded water footprint is closer to 2,000 gallons. So green building and water. So there's a lot of recognition now, and a lot of folks in the green building world talking about water a bit more, talking about this concept of going beyond the tap, thinking beyond on-site conservation. I'll talk in a little bit about the LEED pilot credit, Green Globes, the 2030 Challenge, Living Building Challenge, and Living Product Challenge are all considering water restoration, water footprinting, water handprinting. There's a lot of terms floating around in the green building world, which I believe are on the next slide, that you might be hearing and wondering, what exactly do these mean? Net zero is being used quite a bit. Offsetting, of course. Scale jumping is one of my favorites. This was, I believe, coined somewhere in the Living Futures Institute world of going outside the limits of the community boundary for better solutions. So this is when you've done all you can on your project internally, inside the four walls, inside the nearest part of the community, and you need to go beyond that community boundary for better solutions. And when it comes to water, it is important to consider, where are the water needs? Where is the scarcity? Where are the quality issues? It may not be where your project is, but if you wanted to get your project to net zero, or you want your project to be considered water neutral, for example, you may need to go outside the limits of your community to find solutions and go where the need really is. Where are the water scarcity needs? Handprinting is another term that I believe was coined within the ILFI, the International Living Futures Institute community. And I really like this term as well. When you think about a water footprint, that is the water that your project, or you as a person or a company, that's the water you're using, whether it's embedded or it's the actual footprint, which we'll talk in a moment about scopes of water usage. But this is the footprint that is attributed to the usage of water. And this concept of handprinting is really wonderful. It's considering, what can you leave behind? What can you leave behind that is a positive effect? So not just accounting for what you're taking away from the resources, but what can you leave behind? And water restoration certificates are a great example of leaving something behind that's a positive influence. There's lots of other great examples. There's a company that's a flooring company called Mohawk, and they have several hand printing water projects that they have undertaken. One of them involved installing low flow shower heads in a dormitory at a local college nearby a project, and providing those water savings to a community that they could then claim as a handprint for their product. So through their investment in that local community water savings project, and they were able to claim that their project benefited. Their fluorine product was neutral or close to water neutral savings. So hand printing, leaving behind something that's regenerative and that's better and healthier for the community, and not just accounting for what you're using and taking away. And balancing, that's probably the term that we use the most here at Bonneville Environmental Foundation. We really think of our work as a holistic way to approach a balance between humans and nature, between our activities and what nature needs to continue to regenerate. So going beyond the tap, again, going beyond conservation and investing in meaningful, impactful water restoration projects that are outside your footprint, outside your project, to account for the usage within your project. I'll take a moment just right now to stop and see if there's any questions. Brett, is everything going okay out there? Slides are advancing. You can still hear me? Any questions? Okay, I'm not hearing any questions, so I'm going to move on.
Hey, Heather, I'm talking, but sorry, Heather, I was talking and I was on mute. We can hear you all right. It is breaking up a little bit, but I haven't heard anyone say anything, so we can keep moving. You know, maybe you're going to get to this, so let me know. But the question is, you know, you think about, well, you know what, you're going to get to the offsets part, right?
Yes, I'm going to talk about the water restoration certificates.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Well, let's hold this one till then. So yeah, keep going.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So scopes of water usage. So for those of you who have ever done any kind of greenhouse gas accounting, you may be familiar with greenhouse gas protocols, which provides these scopes of emissions. As a business, this is the framework that you would use to account for greenhouse gas emissions. So we created something similar for scopes of water usage. Just to simplify this, this isn't some universally accepted framework. It's just something that we use that helps us and helps our clients and helps the folks that we work with get their heads around the different types of water usage that you might consider as you're potentially calculating a footprint. And what you might want to include in that footprint. So scope 1, very similar to greenhouse gas protocols, is direct water usage. So this is water used directly by your business or by your project that can be measured. And an example of that is just looking at your utility bill for your water usage. The exact amount of gallons or liters or however they calculate it on your utility bill, that would likely be your direct water usage. So this is again at the tap or at the hose or at the sprinkler. So wherever that water is coming from that you are directly using. Now scopes 2 and 3 are both indirect, but we've called those embedded, or upstream and downstream usage. So and upstream usage is the water used to make your products or the services or the materials that go into making your products or services. So in the building industry, for example, a kilogram of steel has an embedded water footprint of about 5 gallons of water. So it takes about 5 gallons to create that kilogram of steel. And there's examples of that slide I showed you earlier, embedded water in our everyday lives. That's an example of that embedded or upstream water usage. And then downstream water usage, not everybody necessarily has a scope 3 or an indirect downstream, but many products, services, and companies and projects do. For example, if you're a tea company, and this is a real example of a client that I work with. It's a little tea company here in Oregon, down in Ashland. They make the tea bags, dry tea bags, and it takes about 8 ounces of water to make a cup of tea by the end user. So if water is needed to utilize those end products or services, that could be considered your scope 3 indirect or downstream water usage. And so that can be applied in many ways. Maybe for building projects, that could be considered in how much water is needed for the lifetime of the project. For the washing machines and dishwashers, the toilets, as you showed earlier, one of the sponsors. So that downstream water usage would be less if you used a low flow toilet. So this is, again, just examples of scopes of water, and it is voluntary unless you're going for some kind of certification to calculate your water footprint. But it's really, we feel it's very important to understand your water footprint, understand where the water is coming from that your project, your home, your business is using. And that leads us to one of our solutions that we created more than 10 years ago in the footsteps of renewable energy certificates. We created something called a water restoration certificate that is, again, modeled after renewable energy certificates, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And this solution that we came up with, there were many reasons why we wanted to create this environmental product. Part of it was simple equity. We've been working for many years with large corporations on their water footprints, investing in natural water restoration projects that they could claim volumetrically against their footprints. And we had, all these medium and smaller businesses wanted to participate and wanted to be part of the solution, but didn't have the huge budget to invest in a huge project. So we had to find ways, in some ways, commoditize and basically break it into bite-sized pieces any individual or business could purchase to go towards these projects and create more of a community-minded or aggregate type project where it took lots of participation to support a project. This is an actual picture before and after of our first water restoration project, Prickly Pear Creek in Montana. That stream was running dry for many months out of the year, and it was not a stream that had previously run dry, but because of the effects of water rights, which I'll talk about in a second, the stream was running dry and was displacing and harming the natural habitats there. So a little bit more, just to understand what the water restoration, or WRC, is a market-based solution for water restoration, and very similar to an offset or a REC. One water restoration certificate equals 1,000 gallons of water restored, and it can be used to measurably balance a water footprint. And all of the WRCs contribute to restoring the vitality of freshwater ecosystems. Brett, did you want to jump in on that question now, or do you want me to talk a little bit more about the types of WRC projects?
Well, I mean, you kind of answered it. I mean, I was trying to figure out if these are more relevant, when you're trying to think of renewable energy credits or carbon offsets. Is this something more relevant to renewable energy credit or a carbon offset? And it seems like this is more like in the line of thinking with carbon offsets, correct?
Yeah, I think we really took ideas from both of those products. We used RECs as a model, even just for the measurement, 1,000 gallons of water, a REC is 1,000 kilowatt hours, it seemed like a nice round number. Whereas offsets, are a metric ton, which is like 2,206.422 pounds, so, we didn't want to make the metrics too confusing. The part of the WRC that I would say is more like an offset is the additionality. And for those of you who aren't familiar with additionality, that is the aspect of a carbon offset, not so much a renewable energy certificate, but carbon offsets must meet a certain level of additionality, which means that the project would not have happened if not for the carbon offset, the expected either income or policy change from the project itself. So an example of that, it's a little easier to give examples of that. For example, I get many calls a week from people saying, "Oh, you know, I've got this 3 acres of trees in my backyard that I'm not going to cut down. Can I sell carbon offsets?" And I'm like, "Well, no, you can't, because you weren't planning on cutting those down. They're not under threat of being cut down. So that's not really an additional project. So something that wasn't going to happen anyway. It has to be additional, something that was not going to happen. So it has to be a stand of trees that is under threat, because maybe that land or that timber is very valuable, and it would take this offset project to put a stop there. So water restoration projects are much more like offset projects in that respect, in that they're highly additional. They would not happen without the market and the investments that we've created through the WRC investment portfolio. So does that answer the question, Brett?
Yeah, it does. And I guess, maybe while you're going through these other types, maybe what you could talk to us a little bit about how, I assume, even with your best of intentions of trying to preserve an area, climate change could derail it. So maybe speak to a little bit on how you can protect against that as well.
Right. So that's kind of in I guess carbon offset lingo, that's reversals, or yeah, that is that certainly can be a concern. We haven't had any reversals that I'm aware of on any of our projects due to climate change specifically, but we've had some issues with, honestly, with the COVID-19, with some permitting issues. And so far, none of these have resulted in true reversals. In fact, most of our projects are to prevent reversals, putting measures in place to keep reversals from happening. But there's certainly been delays due to issues with permitting due to the pandemic, but climate change itself has not posed any specific issues for us yet, but we certainly know that could happen. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Going back to the scopes, we deal with a lot of builders, new home builders, remodelers, architects, new construction.
Mm-hmm.
Where would, this is kind of set up, scopes are kind of set up for business operations, but where would you see someone who's like, building a home or a building and then handing it off and saying, well, they wanted it to be, kind of give their client a water offset, or would it really only work in operations?
No, it certainly could be, scopes could certainly be applied on a project basis for sure. And yeah, you could gift that to the owner, to whoever the project is handed off to, or whoever has commissioned that project. And again, keep in mind that these are scopes that we kind of created as a framework to be helpful. They aren't strict or set in stone. They're not necessarily recognized by larger organizations, but they are just a helpful framework. And also, it's important to keep in mind that the work of water footprinting is a bit behind the work of carbon footprinting, where there's quite a bit of research, coefficients, to be used, and frameworks for carbon accounting, where scopes of water and water footprinting and water accounting is still very early in its evolution, and is still very, very voluntary, I guess, is the point I'm trying to make, that this is a voluntary thing, and this is something that can be done. You can choose which of these scopes you wish to participate in, which one makes the most sense for you. And absolutely, on a project basis, certainly there's direct water usage at a construction site, for example. There's embedded water usage in the building materials, and there is that potential downstream usage, if you wish to include it, of the operation of the building or the house or the project once it's up and running.
Great, thank you.
Sure. So I'm going to jump back into the types of WRC projects. And again, I won't spend too much time on these, but just wanted to help folks understand, what is a water restoration project, what qualifies. And for us, mainly it is nature-based projects, so projects that restore natural flows. So we typically aren't doing green infrastructure type projects like in municipalities or sewer drainage issues, green building type projects ourselves. Most people are using the WRCs to apply to a green building project and investing in natural solutions outside their four walls. So examples are, barrier removal. So the most obvious, it might be a dam removal. There's flow restoration transactions. This one is usually the one people have the most questions about, but this basically is water rights. If you are not familiar with water rights, in the US, our water rights laws are very archaic and out of date. They were not written at a time when water scarcity was even a glimmer in anybody's mind. These laws that we are also working to change the laws themselves and the policy, but in the meantime, these policies basically are a use it or lose it policy for agricultural water usage. So if you are a farmer, you have a certain amount of water rights every year, and you must use that water or you risk losing that amount of water. So if you have a year that has heavy rainfall and you actually don't need to use that much water, you will still run that water either through fields or through ditches, basically taking it out of the natural resource and putting it through where it picks up the nutrients, and it goes potentially into groundwater, not to come back to the surface for many, potentially hundreds of years. And the surface freshwater resource loses in that scenario, very similar to what I showed you with that Prickly Pear Creek picture. Those streams and resources are running dry because they must use that water. So we have worked out some loopholes in which farmers do not have to use the water legally and they still retain their water rights. So that's a flow restoration transaction. Most of the rest of these are either technology or modernization of agricultural resources such as floodgates and irrigation systems. And then restoration of natural hydrology, that's your basic boots on the ground habitat restoration type projects, tree planting, beaver dam studies, and some of them do involve agriculture as well. We have a project in Georgia that was very simple. Basically, we just needed to put up a fence to keep the hogs out of the stream and their excrement. And now that stream is running clearer and cleaner, and there's no pollution downstream. So some of these projects are actually quite simple. Some of them are quite complicated. Any questions? Yes, go ahead.
So I'm thinking of and maybe they're not the best example with some stuff, but land conservancy, and I'm thinking of the idea of like living building. I know for I think at least in one of their old programs, I really like this idea where you would sort of offset, like if you're developing 3 acres, you would offset 3 acres somewhere else in perpetuity. And it almost seems like there's kind of a 2-for-1 here where you could offset 3 acres of water restoration area. Now maybe that's double dipping, and and maybe it goes against the sort of idea that it wasn't going to happen already. But have you seen any connection like that or any opportunities there?
Right. So we've actually been talking a lot about what we're calling stacked benefits. That's kind of, I think, what you're referring to, stacked benefits within an environmental product. And while we are able to list, at least qualitatively, the co-benefits of a lot of these projects. So for example, you're right, there might be an amount of acreage or a species that's associated, with this particular project, or carbon. A lot of people want to double up on the carbon in the water and make a product that actually does both. It's just very tricky because of measurement, verification. It's expensive. We have been talking about this for many years. It's in practice, it's extremely difficult, but that doesn't mean that those co-benefits aren't something that you could certainly claim. They're just not certified or verified in a quantitative way, the way that the gallons of water are verified and converted to 1,000-gallon increments for each certificate. But stacked benefits and co-benefits are definitely very strong on many of these projects and can be claimed from a qualitative perspective, maybe just not from a quantitative perspective.
And then maybe you're talking about other types or not, but I'm almost thinking, kind of going back to that question about, is this renewable energy credits or carbon offsets, because that's the world we kind of live in, many of us, so we're trying to, pigeonhole this thing somewhere. But, I almost think like, okay, renewable energy credits, you're catching the sun or the wind. In
Right.
many cases, we see projects that could catch rainwater, use that rainwater from becoming a stormwater problem and use it to reduce water in the toilets or drinking for tenants, and reduce water bills where they're going up. Now, could somebody say, look, I've got a huge project where I can catch millions of pounds of water that I would have normally just let into the storm and help people in my project in need get their water bills down? Could they generate WRCs and work with you and use that to fund their project, or is that out of line?
Well, you know what? It's funny. As of a couple weeks ago, I probably would have said no. As I said earlier, we haven't done a lot of those green infrastructure type projects for various reasons, mainly just because we're an environmental organization. Our work really has been focused, on natural and agriculture. Agriculture is only involved because of how much water it takes out of the natural resource. So we haven't really done a lot of these like inner city or municipal type projects. But I found out a few weeks ago that we are starting to look at that, and we are kind of just discussing internally how that works, what the additionality is. We definitely want high additionality. Like, would this project happen without WRCs, without that income stream, or is this truly a community-based project? Would this have been all, the co-benefits to maybe a low-income community, or a university or a city college or something like that? So my answer basically is we're looking into it, and there is a possibility that we might consider projects like that more in the future as we are starting to branch out from what we're used to doing more on the natural side of things.
Awesome, cool. Well, thank you for considering that.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of building projects, I know I've alluded to this LEED pilot credit, so I just want to make sure before I let you all go, and I only have a couple more slides after this, actually one more, that you do understand that the LEED pilot credit and how to utilize that if you wish to. You can, of course, use WRCs many different ways with building projects, as I said, for ILFI, Living Building Challenge, Green Globes, but you don't necessarily have to align with a certification to use them. You can just use them if you want and add that claim to the building just for the sake of doing it. But if you are pursuing LEED, there is a pilot credit that has been approved for, I think it's eight years or so, 6 years, that involves WRCs. And it is a very simple one. If you have a project, especially with low water usage to begin with, it's very affordable. But basically, you can purchase WRCs to match the 5-year water budget of your project to get this LEED pilot credit. And there's only kind of one main stipulation about how many exactly you need to buy. You can buy 100% of the water budget for 5 years if there is a WRC project within that project's watershed. And the definition of that is the USGS water map, which I could send you if you have questions about it, but typically I just double check that myself. And then if it is outside of a watershed that produces WRCs, then you do need to purchase 200% of the annual water budget for a 5-year contract. And the incentive here is that the better your water efficiency or conservation, there's the baseline water calculation that you can use the LEED WE calculator for, and then there's that design water usage. So the more you're able to reduce that design water usage, the cheaper this credit becomes. And the determination of the WRC being inside or outside of the project's watershed, again, you would just contact me for that, because I have access to the portfolio and know which watersheds we have WRC projects in. We don't always have them in every watershed. These projects do come and go throughout the years, and they shift wherever the water projects are needed most. So I would just reach out to me if you have any questions about if your project is in or outside of a watershed.
Do you ever find that a project is coming to you that's going lead and they want to pursue this, and then, you know, a lot of times they might be engaged with their local environmental action council, who usually are managing or helping watersheds, and then saying, oh, this big project wants to go lead, and now we're going to help use some of that funds to boost our watershed? Or is it typically the other way around? They just are going lead and they just cross their fingers that there happens to be one, or they have to go outside of it?
Yeah, usually it's the other way around. I probably get 3 or 4 inquiries a week on this pilot credit. So I'm constantly checking against the USGS map in our WRC portfolio. And to be honest, even though it sounds like a big increase, that 200%, for most projects, it's not that much more expensive. I do offer a discount when that is the case, when they have to do the 200%. So it's not a full twice the cost. It's more like a 25 or 50% more. See how bad my math is. It's just a little bit more. It's not a full double of the cost.
I really like the idea of the local watershed aspect, but, you know, what if, I guess let's take it to a larger scale. Like, you know, I'm here in Michigan, right? And I could be in Grand Rapids, and building a project, and, you know, what does the watershed matter to me? I'm pulling directly out of Lake Michigan. So is there any negotiation that you've seen where there could be like 150% if someone's like, hey, we're getting all of our water from Lake Michigan, so what if we had this project off of Lake Michigan? I mean, could be, you know, up in the UP or something.
Right. So that's where the reason that this credit was designed this way was to not only obviously incentivize more efficiency in the projects themselves, but to back to what I was saying earlier, that it's really it's needs based. So where our WRC projects are located is where there is the most need. So your project may be, you know, very easily supplied with water. So therefore, if you wanted to pursue this credit, you might get your WRCs somewhere in Arizona, which is, you know, very critical need of water. So you're supporting a project that needs it more. If Michigan doesn't have water scarcity issues, then there's no sense in having a WRC project in Michigan. The projects are going to be where the need is highest.
Oh, that's a good point. And I do wonder, you know, what if there's water scarcity under the ground, like in a, you know, in an aquifer, which we see. Do you see anybody trying to actually fill aquifers back up and restore them through this program at all?
I believe we might. I'll have to get back to you on that one. Actually, I feel like a few weeks ago in our water project meeting, we might have mentioned some aquifer replenishment projects. Those ones aren't always. I should mention that we do dozens of water projects, and not all of them are converted to WRCs. A handful of them are, but we do lots of projects that don't convert to WRCs. We just do the project either on behalf of a corporate client or just because it's our mission and we're just doing it for the sake of doing it. And I'm not sure if that project was a WRC project or not. As I said, we do tons of projects. Sometimes I lose track of all of them, but I will check on that and let you know if we have an aquifer project in the pipeline.
Yeah, that would be really cool to hear. Just, you know, not too far where we are, there's some aquifer issues. So are there, well, I'll get to these other ones at the end, and let you wrap up. I guess the only thing I wanted to say on the lead side is if any of you are pursuing pilot credits, I believe you need to get those pre-approved, even though, you know, it's in there, you still have to ask for permission. Don't try to submit it at the end of the project. We've seen it delay the project. So make sure you're getting your pilot credits pre-approved before you submit. And then I'd also say that the water efficiency rating system, the WERS index from Green Builder Coalition, they do have a place in their program to reduce water scores based on water offsets. I don't think they call out any specific organization, but they did pre-set it up for things like this. So you can check that out. And then our own Green Star program, if you are pursuing it, we are looking at potentially allowing you to claim NetZero Water as long as you have a home water score of 5 or higher, and you can buy the rest with following sort of these WRCs here from Bonneville. So we're just announcing that now. So I guess now I have to do it. So wanted to let you all know that.
Great. Thanks, Brett. That's great. Thanks for mentioning all of that. And the last little thing I'll just throw in is if anybody wants information about the pilot credit or wants to know, if you'd have to do 100% or 200%, just email me. I only need 2 pieces of information. I need to know the zip code of the project and the gallons of water usage from that calculator, the design usage, not the baseline. And I can send you back a quick quote. Okay. Almost done here. I just wanted to kind of round things out with, again, this is a framework that we kind of came up with our, over 20 years of experience in water stewardship with corporations, projects, other nonprofits, just being in this world. As long as we just have this very simple framework to keep in mind when you're thinking about water stewardship more holistically, that there are 4 main pillars in general, and conservation, of course, is very important. Conservation, we consider that the kind of that at the tap, that's the reduction of water. So overall, just using less water. And that's also applies to that embedded water usage, in your personal lives, maybe switch to tea, which has only 26 gallons of water as opposed to 36 gallons of water, a day, or consider, buying used clothing like jeans and shirts and things that require less water. So consider that embedded water usage as well in your conservation. Innovation is the next pillar. I love this one. This one always makes me think of a good friend of mine, Pete Munoz, who you guys should definitely have come speak to you as well. He works at Biohabitats, and I usually actually do these webinars with him. He does some really amazing work in innovation, especially in building with water capture, with creating and basically kind of biomimicry type buildings where there's a lot of mimicry of nature and the cycles of water. They've even come up with a way to capture human urine and capture nutrients that can be converted and actually sold in the agricultural markets. I don't remember what it is. I think it's ammonia. But those are examples of innovation. One more example of innovation is, a company that we've worked with for many years, Coca-Cola, switched out all of their bottle washing from water to air. And high pressure air is just as effective in disinfecting as the water was. So innovation is very important. Awareness, just knowing that there are issues. It's easy to forget when we can just go and turn on a tap and have water come out that's clean and fresh and drinkable. But that is not the case everywhere. And it's not just in developing countries that's an issue. There are many water issues right here in the United States. Arizona just finally put together a drought contingency plan last year that we helped them with. It's shocking to think that they went that long without it, because they're under very high risk of running out of water. So being aware yourself, being aware with your project partners, your stakeholders, your employees, and just knowing that this is a very real issue that is affecting the planet and being made worse by climate change. And finally, balance. Again, we really try to take a holistic approach to water restoration. And once you've done the conservation and the innovation and the awareness, that last piece is balance. And that's where you can invest outside your four walls, where the need is highest in water restoration projects, to make your project perhaps net zero, or meet one of these certifications if you like, or just for the sake of bringing your project into balance with nature. Oh, look at that, right on time. Got that little alert saying I've got 5 minutes left, and that is it for me. I would love to take any questions. Here's my contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and some extra materials there, and happy to share this presentation as well with anybody. Thanks so much, Brett. Throw any questions out there that you might have, or any last thoughts. I think you're muted, Brett.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. Before we get to those questions that are coming in, take that survey that pops up to get your certificate. Get the, for those of you watching this in the future, get the 80% passing rate. And how do you get your CEUs? Well, for our channel, you can go down into our, either go to our Thinkific channel, bookmark this channel, keep it on hand, check back at it. Otherwise, you can also find it within the YouTube comments section, and you can go and take your quiz there. Otherwise, you can take it on the GBCI website if you're taking your quiz there. And a huge thanks to our board of directors, our volunteers, our new executive director, and our top tier sponsors, Mitsubishi, Build Equinox Serve, and Ream. Huge thanks to all of them and all of you for joining us. So, you know, what, for a landowner to decide to sell you these WRCs, what's their incentive? Is it your payment, or just their will to conserve water, or what is it?
Right, so that would apply to the water rights folks. You're talking about like the farmers who we've created the loophole in policy for them. Yes, there is a financial incentive actually to do that. They do get paid basically to not use that water, and to designate it legally for environmental use, which means they don't lose their water rights. So, and I personally am not involved directly with that process, but I do know that the financial incentive is probably the main reason that they partake in that. They're getting paid to not use water.
Somebody here made a pretty good point that there are still people out there, even in this country, without water. And so could there be, I know bringing people water uses more water, so that's not good, but what if you're bringing people water more efficiently? And I think we talked a little bit about this, but you know, if you're bringing them water more efficiently when they didn't have water at all, is there a way to work something out where you say, hey, we're now below the traditional baseline?
That's a great question, and it's not something we've focused on in the past. Our main mission alignment is with natural water hydrology and restoration, which is maybe a little removed from bringing people fresh water, but that really is what the underlying causes of the water scarcity is. This natural resources being depleted by these various mostly agricultural practices and policies. So we see what we're doing, even though we're not bringing like bottled water to individuals or people, we're helping solve some of those underlying issues. But there are really amazing organizations out there who do that and who do bring that water. And it's actually, we don't see that as an issue. Bringing people drinking water is not the reason that we have water scarcity. There's much bigger impacts along the industrial and agricultural lines. So don't hesitate to support anyone bringing fresh water to people who need it, for sure.
Yeah, and I didn't want to. I was trying to say the best way to say it. I kind of stumbled through, but certainly did not want to make that a negative. It's just now you went from not using water to using more, but that's a good reason to use water. Obviously, we all need to drink water. It's important. It's a human right that we all deserve. So anyway, who else does these? Who else has these WRCs besides you all?
Well, they are actually a BEF product. So we are the creator and market currently. We do have some resellers as well out there. that I'm trying to remember the name of right now. I think Natural Capital Partners and Carbon Fund and TerraPass all also resell these, but they are a product that we created, and they just haven't taken a hold like the carbon market or the rec market. So they just aren't out there being resold and brokered and stuff. So it's mostly us, but we would love to see an expansion of the market. We would love to see them take hold. It's just not a big money-making scheme, to be honest. It's something that we use to continue our water restoration projects and keep them going. And it's been a great solution for us, but hopefully someday maybe they'll have broader market base.
And Heather, where can we have you back on to talk about carbon offsets later this year? Does that sound good?
Sure. Yeah, I'll talk about carbon offsets or RECs.
RECs, yeah.
Any of those would be fine. Sure.
Yeah. Well, we'll be excited to have you back. All the couple hiccups, but this went really well. I really appreciate you coming on. I really appreciate Bonneville and the foundation there for having you on. And where can people contact you to learn more?
Yeah, you're welcome. Oh, I thought you're not sharing the screen anymore, but my contact information is on that last slide. It's just my first initial and last name at b-e-f.org. And Brett, you're welcome to send this presentation out to folks, and my email. Folks are welcome to contact me with questions anytime.
All right. Well, Heather, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to you all for joining us here. Have a great rest of your week. And again, stay well, stay safe out there. Things are looking good now, but we've got some new variants on the way that are potentially more deadly, reinfect, potentially, are easier to catch. And so we don't want to see things pick up. We want to see you all in person again. We love doing webinars, but we want to see you all in person. So stay safe, stay masked. Ventilation, building science, filtration, humidification, we know that this can help beyond COVID. And so spread the word that we need to make our buildings better. We can stay healthier, stay safer. Take care. Goodbye.
Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.